Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. I thought there was going to be some banner that said, like, hey, you're live. I'm Jennifer Lynn Robinson, and I'm here with Ernest Owens. And welcome to our evening on a conversation about networking, who you know, the economics of networking. We're really excited to be here. We've already been conversing a bunch and having a nice conversation. So now you guys can join us. And, please put your questions in the chat box. We'll be taking questions towards the end. But of course, we want to start with something more conversational before we get into the nitty gritty of the networking. So let me ask Ernest to start and tell us, obviously this is a difficult and challenging time in some ways, but I think a lot of people have also been making great changes, and it's kind of a rebirth in a lot of ways for people to kind of, refocus their efforts in different parts of their lives. So tell me how the pandemic's been treating you and, what good has come out of it for you so far?
Yes, thank you, Jennifer, for having me on, and thank you everyone who's watching today. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of breaking news this week. As a journalist, as an entrepreneur, it's been a lot. During this pandemic, it's been hard, right? In the sense of one, as just someone who is just going through the ins and outs of the pandemic, being an entrepreneur and just having to pivot and really take all of the different things that is coming my way and trying to make the most of the situation, given how bittersweet it can be. But then also being, someone who's Black and someone who's a part of this larger community of people of color, dealing with the conversations around the racial injustices and the protests is a juggle, both of that, both personally and emotionally. And so it's really been a very, tough summer, but also a summer of a lot of opportunity and ways to refocus and reshift social responsibility, impact, but also being entrepreneurial and figuring out new ways to, broaden my base and broaden my brand. So it's really been a season of self-exploration and self-love and growth and care as well.
Yeah. And I'll put you on the spot a little because I know something personal I wanted to share as an accomplishment. You were almost finished your master's program, correct?
Yes. I'm in my final semester. I'm getting a master's degree in communication management at USC, and it's been virtual, and it was virtual before the pandemic. And so it's kind of interesting how everyone is, transitioning to virtual learning, but I kind of was ahead of that a little bit studying. So I'm in my final semester, and, that's some of the things that have been keeping me going is goals that I've already made before the pandemic and just really pushing through. So, thank you for that shout out, and just, we're making it happen over here.
I'm excited for you. Yeah, I'll share a little bit for me. Of course, I agree. It's been a challenging time. For those who may not know me, I do a lot of speaking for a lot of, companies and conferences and that sort of thing. And almost immediately, a lot of that dried up because, of course, we're not congregating in big events and companies and conferences and all that fun stuff. So I, of course, pivoted, moved to virtual, doing virtual speaking, virtual consulting. I've been fortunate to get some projects, but obviously business isn't what it was when I'm going out and, having my normal schedule. I think the highlight for me has been I gave a TEDx talk, which has been a goal of mine for 5 years. Yes. I was supposed to travel to the University of Arkansas the week the country shut down and do it how I expected on the big stage with the logo and the accolades and the audience feedback. And I ended up giving it in an empty studio in Philly during the pandemic. So that was challenging, but also I felt really good about the fact that I pushed through because I'd prepared for months for it. And, it was something that was a big goal of mine. So that's definitely been a highlight for me.
No, absolutely. And, I saw that you recently just had some good opportunities to consulting for people around the field of professional development. And I think one of, the questions and conversations, I definitely think we should have with the people watching is, why do you think it's important to use networking for professional development? A lot of people, our friends and other colleagues that I've talked to always look at networking as this like thing on the side, or just this hobby. But, there are a lot of benefits, I think, that people ignore in professional development that networking really does help to advance.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. For me, my background is as a litigator. When I shifted a career to be an entrepreneur and focus more on, the marketing networking stuff that I do now, I had no network outside of the legal community. So I have seen firsthand over the years I've been running my business that all of my opportunities have come through networking. When I didn't have that
Hmm.
community, I was really at a loss. But I mean, as my business has grown, I mean, it's been invaluable. The contacts I've made, the people that can say a good word for you or recommend you for something, the opportunities that you get
Yeah.
just by diversifying your network and going to different things and talking to different people that are outside of your inner circle. It's been invaluable. So I'm one of those practice what I preach people. Like I can't even talk about how much I value it. I mean, I don't want us to get into all the statistics and things, but I mean, I think there are a lot of people that feel, it's something I do when I lose a job or, when I want to pivot my career, which is what I thought, when I
Yes.
had more of a traditional.
Yeah.
But as I've, grown as an entrepreneur, I've really seen the value. And I think, these days, and we'll get into that more, I'm sure, but these days, if you don't know somebody and you don't have kind of that access and those opportunities, you're really at a disadvantage. What about you? I mean, you've graduated and basically gone on your own right away.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I never looked at, I was always steering away from the word networking. I wrote this piece for
Mhm.
Philadelphia Magazine called Confessions of a Serial
Yep.
Networker, and I was a serial networker. And, for me, I never looked at it that way. I never had the vernacular to look at it in the word network. I was always cringe at it because I went to the University of Pennsylvania. And for those who know, we have the Wharton School of Business, and we have all these very pretentious people who, kind of look at these things and it's very like, give the card, have the
Right.
coffee setup day. And those people who are actually well versed in networking don't ever treat it in this very aggressively transactional way. Once I got more exposed to networking and really hung out with people, the real people that teach it, that understand it, actually warn people not to treat it like that because it will be very limiting and daunting and quite frankly just bad etiquette. So for me, I always looked at it as getting to know different people and just learning more about people, and naturally the relationships and connections will build itself. And when I look at my career and how it's transitioned over the years, it was because of just people that I met and found a connection with, and worked on intentional, meaningful relationships that just led to some really incredible opportunities. And so that's what I try to tell people who are often shy or are kind of hesitant about whether it makes sense to quote unquote network. But I always just tell people that it's simply getting to know people and really having some intentional conversations about similar goals and opportunities.
So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about pre-pandemic networking, when we were all still going out and dressing
Yes.
up and going to some of those events, whether it was giving out the card or just trying to form those in-person conversations. That's so 2019, right? Yes.
Yes, it is.
But I think that you and I have had discussions about some of the benefits of that, but also some of the shortcomings, and particularly for the topic we're dealing with
Hmm.
today. Some of the challenges of having that access, particularly as entrepreneurs, but I mean, even people that are in more traditional corporate roles. As I was thinking about things today, it really depends on, do you have a boss that's going to look to you to bring you as their plus one to something you might not otherwise be able to go to? As an entrepreneur, is the price point of an event going to be something that precludes you from attending? Is there a VIP list that you can't get on? Is there somebody who's guiding you? Do you have the right mentor? Are you attending the right things? So all of those things, I think, were definitely more concerns in my mind pre-pandemic. Having that access, being at the right events, being in the room to have those conversations with people that you can develop relationships with. What do you think?
Oh, 100% agree. I think,
Yeah.
as someone who is a millennial, I'm 28, I'll be 29 next month in October. As someone who is Black, queer, originally not from Philadelphia, I grew
Yeah.
up in Houston, Texas. And so as a transplant, as someone who was younger, someone who was of color, I, for one, did not necessarily have the instant, cosign. And that's what I always tell people, that there's always a cosign in various industries based on your pedigree, based on who you know, based on your exposure. And so for a lot of different people who are coming from, backgrounds where they're, Black and brown, or there's someone who's younger, there's various barriers that happens. Sometimes it's based on gender. Sometimes it's based on the level of, your professional title, your level of education. Sometimes it's like, do you have a college degree? That oftentimes creates a barrier for people to go to certain events and be able to have that professional development networking. It's oftentimes based on, are you from Philadelphia? There is a tight citywide network. If you're from a particular city, they know people they've known for years. And if you're a newcomer, there's a wall there. So I do think that a lot of this is based off of personal relationships. There also is arguably nepotism to a certain degree, but there's also barriers like price points, right? Some of these events that people go to, it's a invite only. But if it's not invite only, then there's a conversation about price. And if you're trying to go to some of these events and meet people of influence, you're paying sometimes ridiculous prices. When I first started off in the business, when I was around 23, when I started really doing media hardcore in Philadelphia, there was a big influence event I wanted to go to downtown. And there was a lot of great journalists that were there that I looked up to. And one of the journalists, the event was $150.
Right.
And my rent at the time in Philadelphia for my studio apartment, my first studio apartment, once I graduated, was $450 a month. That's nowhere near what I pay now. But at the time, I was like, I would have to pay 1/3 of my rent to go to this event, to network with people that I looked up to in the industry. I didn't attend the event, but I look back at events, situations like that, and wonder how many other people experience those types of situations. And how hard it could be for them to, make that connection. Because it's not necessarily about their lack of talent or their lack of passion. It's often, external factors that impact the internal.
I think that's a great example. And I think besides even the event costs that we're talking about, there's also, I think, pre-pandemic, a barrier with joining some of these organizations. Because sometimes to join the organizations is $500. $1,000, $1,200, and it's just what you're saying. I mean, whether you're starting out, your career and expenses, and you have student loans, and all the things that people have, or even if you're further along, but maybe you've made a pivot and you're an entrepreneur, and there's all kinds of reasons where that can be a barrier. And I think one thing that we've seen with the pandemic is sort of more of that democratization of the networking opportunities. Do you want to talk a little bit about that first?
Yeah, absolutely. But first, I want to ask, how do you think, this impact opportunities for people? This lack of access. How do you think that impacts opportunities for people? In your view. How do you think that impacts opportunities?
As a woman, I feel like you read a lot about women who start off in any kind of career, in any industry, who don't necessarily ask or bargain for negotiate with their salary enough. Sometimes they just take what's offered. And the thing is, when you start to look at the statistics, when women do that, when anyone does that, but it particularly happens for women, they never catch up. They never catch up as far as the career professional development. Salary wise, once they have agreed to a certain level, they're always behind the 8 ball compared to, particularly the white men, but men in general. So I use that as an example because I think the same thing works with networking as works with salary, right? If you don't have that access, right? And I think a lot of times, and you and I have talked about this, I think a lot of times it isn't a lack of talent, like you said. You see a lot of the same faces and the same names. And the problem is, I think for a lot of people, they're not getting out there and getting visible in the same way maybe you and I are able to, or, a lot of other people on this call, I'm sure, are in that field, but there's still a big segment where you hear the same names that are getting those opportunities to moderate, to be on panels, to speak, to be on local media or national media in your case. I think that there's the same names that you hear. And, so I think that's something as far as access where it really impacts people. I think also, you have to take some personal responsibility. So in my world, you see a lot of people that want to be where they're comfortable, and where they're comfortable could be a number of things. It could be, I do only things in my industry because I want to hang out with my industry people. It could be, I only do things with African Americans or Jewish people, or, whatever it is. I think some people really don't look at the bigger picture of where their networking is coming from, where their contacts are, and they're not trying to diversify, cross industry, different types of people, ages, there's all of those opportunities out there if you're willing to look for them and try to take advantage of them. But I think, there is the limitation of access, but there's also the personal responsibility of people creating those opportunities for themselves by expanding their worldview.
Yeah, and I also agree with that. But I also think too, to a certain extent, is that a lot of people who do get into make it in those spaces. I finally have broken in recent years. I want to say the last 2 to 3 years, I think I have finally found my niche in getting in the network scene in Philadelphia. And, for myself, and I can only imagine for you, it's like once you get somewhat into certain these spaces, you want to fill it out. When I get an opportunity to bring a +1, I do bring people that I know who wouldn't have had the opportunity to go any other way. And so I have used the power of the +1 or +2 or +3. Yesterday event I went to I was able to bring 3 people. And so I sometimes think about people that I know who are professionals who aren't getting those invites or being, brought into the mix, that hopefully that they go and they, network with someone and meet someone there and, get that opportunity to expand. But I think, part of this is that I do believe the pandemic has really changed how networking has moved online. And I will say that somewhat of a plus side to that is that we're starting to see different faces, I think, more on these virtual networking sessions and conversations in ways that we hadn't seen before. And I personally think it's because, it's one thing to go to an event and see some of the same people at certain events, but when you're at home and you're having to go on and log on, it does seem daunting and a little exhausting to see the same person on your laptop screen and see the same person moderating on screen. And so it has been refreshing to see some of the changes, the virtual changes. There has been some hiccups, and you and I have talked about, how there is an inequitable side to a lot of the virtual stuff that we're seeing. But one of the plus sides and the positive things is that we have seen, with the pandemic, nearly all of the networking has moved online. And so, my question to you, Jennifer, is like, how has you think that has changed the playing field?
I absolutely do. And it's funny, we're talking about hiccups, and I'm just going to put it out there while we're talking. You may hear my dogs in the background. Normally, when I do my sessions, I have them in a room, but I thought we were okay because it's the evening, and my husband said he would take management of them, but he has not, clearly. So I apologize for the background that you're hearing. I know it's not professional. And as we talk about how to present yourself online, I feel like a fraud, as my dogs bark in the background. But yeah, because I am in any case, moving virtually has really been, in a lot of ways, a benefit. I agree with you about the different voices. It has been refreshing. I think in the positions that people like you and I are in now, we weren't always in, but I think what you said about the +1 or +2 is so important. I think also, I'm sure this happens for you as well. A lot of times people will ask me, if I speak somewhere, do you have somebody else you would recommend as a speaker? Do you have somebody I can get a quote from for an article? Sometimes I've come to you and asked you, do you have any recommendations for me? So I think that stuff in general is so important. Are you putting names out there? Or are you giving somebody an opportunity who might not otherwise have it? And as far as, moving virtual, I think I have seen, a lot of organizations are moving to either a lower cost because it's online, or they're offering their seminars and even other programs for free. So, that definitely democratizes, people's ability to have access because, you can check out different organizations and you can attend different functions. A lot of times the networking can even be more intimate. You go into the Zoom rooms, or they might have other opportunities, or people are connecting afterwards. I think a lot of people that maybe are looking for that mentorship, or, some higher up in a company that may have taken months in real life to meet, or, to clear their schedule so they could have a 15-minute talk or coffee and get advice or, access as we're talking. I think that has really benefited people in the virtual setting because people are more available. And if they can talk to you for 15, 20 minutes and make an introduction from their computer, that's a lot easier than doing it between business trips to Chicago and wherever else they go. And so I think those sorts of things have benefited people. And I think, like you said, the opportunities for speaking, moderating, I've definitely seen a lot more of those opportunities as people are home and they're able to, they need people pretty much every day for things, right? So I think there's been more opportunities. I'd also love to hear your take as somebody of color, because I feel like with everything that's been going on, particularly since June, I know, you and a lot of my other friends of color, colleagues of color, have been given a lot more opportunities because people want diverse panels, or they want to talk about, what's this going to mean? And, and I think that can be a benefit because it's visibility, but it can also be a burden, to be in that position. And you and I talked the other day about kind of that emotional toll, the emotional labor, not being paid for your services and value, and people of color overwhelmingly getting called upon now to kind of be the voice. So I'd love to hear you respond on that. I'm sure you have a lot to say.
Yes. Where do I start? I think, that's the bittersweet, that's the bittersweetness of it all. It's like, to a certain degree, I have had opportunities. I think virtual has allowed opportunities for, within this reckoning that this country is experiencing right now, we're seeing a lot of companies, want to have Black and brown faces, lead conversations on racial inequity and injustice. And it's great. It's refreshing. And they're thinking about people that they've never considered before. Personally, it is bittersweet. And I also am a little offended sometimes because, a lot of the work that I do isn't just about racial inequity. I could talk about politics. I could talk about entrepreneurship. I could talk about startups. I could talk about journalism. And it's interesting that all of a sudden, because of this moment we have in time, now people, see the value of me and my voice to talk about issues, that aren't about like what we're talking about today, networking. And that has been an interesting, moment. But one of the most important things that has stood out to me in this process is that a lot of the organizations that are starting to, become, quote unquote woke on a lot of these issues don't understand the respect to the profession itself of the work that you and I do. We're individuals that do public speaking for a living. We, this is a part of our business plans and models. And in these conversations, as much as I am, happy that they're happening, what I am not happy about is that I think they don't value it enough to say that we should pay speakers who are speaking about these issues. And so I've had to turn down certain engagements where, a company, a Fortune 500 company, maybe one of them that's here in this city, that, said, we value, your writing and your words on this topic, and we would love for you for 90 minutes to discuss these issues of social inequity and discrimination, which is very painful and not necessarily pleasant conversation. But they say at the same time, we don't have a budget for this event, but we would love for the exposure. And I'm like, I have enough exposure. If I didn't have exposure, you would have not been contacting me to begin with. Right. And for you not to compensate, does not do me a service, especially the emotional labor, of course, that you mentioned. And I'm seeing this happen to a lot of young and emerging professionals who are getting access to these platforms, but the equity is not there. And I think that's something that I've seen in this networking exchange, is that when you're dealing with these types of major companies and groups that have this capital, every opportunity that's given to you isn't necessarily an opportunity you should take, because sometimes it doesn't make sense. Literally, it doesn't make sense and it doesn't make sense. And when it doesn't do either of those things, that's also a chance for you to dodge it. So that's something that has happened to me during this experience, that has been a wake-up call, for me to really begin to think about how I feel about being a part of this digital, virtual sharing of information.
Yeah, no, I think those are all good points. And actually, I think moves me into what I want to talk about a little next, which is how to stay visible, particularly during this weird time where we're not really going out that much. And we're still trying to grow as a professional or as an entrepreneur, or both. I think one of the things that caught my attention from what you said is that, when you have people that are being selected for these opportunities and maybe not being paid and they're being choosy as they should be, they should at least look at ways to capitalize, right? And how can they do that as far as building their own professional development and staying visible? So, one of the things is that I was thinking about from what you were saying is, for example, if you are moderating a panel or you are speaking online for something, either, you can get permission to record it, or hopefully the organization is recording it. And then you can break that up into video segments that you can use for your social media for the next month when maybe you don't have anything on your docket of what you're doing. And, you can still put yourself out there and your content and your expertise and like why you should be looked at as a thought leader and all those great things. So I think, that's one way that you can stay visible and make those kinds of opportunities that you do select work for you, even if it's not in the form of a paycheck, right?
Agreed. And let me be clear. I think it's all about the bandwidth. What is your bandwidth? There's always a way to see a different value of something. There's someone you want to see. There is something, there's more a body of work that you're trying to build so that you can be able to promote the services. I think for me, where I'm at in my career, I've done a lot of conversations pertaining to racial injustice and inequities, and I have a guest lecture I'm doing on the topic in 2 days. That's going to be great for a group in LA. I'm doing another speaking event next week. And so for me, it's really about the stuff that will challenge me that's different. I might pick it up and do it. It might be a situation where there's some people that they have on the panel that I have always wanted an opportunity to speak with or connect with. I've done some really good panels this summer where there's other people in the industry that I've admired and loved. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to be on a panel with this group. This is an opportunity to really connect on a different level. So I always tell people that you have to make it make sense to you before you sign up for it. I think that's something that's important. Everyone has their own value metric. And there's some things that you're like, what? Because of the emotional labor I'm going to have to put on this particular topic, I do think there has to be a level of equity there that is fiscal. But it might be a conversation where you're like, let's just talk about networking in the 21st century. And it's with people that you like. And you say, what, this is just great and fun. And this is a great opportunity to just, talk about an important issue. And you say, what, the experience to do this brings me so much joy that I'll do it for free. But everybody has to, figure out what their metric is. And I think that's what I've told a lot of people that starting this is that you have to know your comfort zones. You have to establish your yeses and your nos first. Don't feel obligated to do things that you don't feel comfortable, because it does impact your performance. It does impact your presentation. And in the space of networking, the number one thing that people can sense before you open your mouth is energy. People can read your energy in a room. People can read your body language and your comfort. I've gone to events where I've seen people and I said, hi, how you feeling? And they're like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's good. And you tell based on how stiff they are and how their energy is, that it's not true. And so I always tell people, one thing that I do just in general, whether it's a virtual networking event, a personal networking event, or it's just something, whatever the case is, however I personally feel, if I don't feel good or I don't feel great, I won't go, because I don't want to put myself in a position where I can sour an experience with someone else, but also further agitate myself. And that's something that I tell people to do even in virtual.
That is so important. Normally,
Yeah.
In person, I talk a lot about mindset, and that's one of the things I always tell people. Like, even if you paid for an event and it's a burden that you've, put out that money, if you're not in the right mindset and you're going to make a bad impression, don't go. And I think it's so important that you said that that still applies to the virtual setting. I think there is an aspect of this that's, and a lot of times can be more casual, and you think, I'll just get on and, I'll look bored, and maybe I won't dress up.
Right. So, I'll just get a drink. I'll just get a drink.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it also depends on, a lot of us are doing some more fun kind of, Zoom happy hours and things like that. Although I think at this point we're at our limit with that, maybe. But I think it's really important
we are.
Across online, since everything is pretty much virtual right now, and it seems that it's definitely going to continue. I would say for at least 4 to 6 more months, maybe longer, we're looking at this virtual world. So at this point, if you haven't figured it out, how you can present yourself in this little box, to communicate with people in a positive way, you're definitely at a disadvantage. And I know one of the things you and I have talked about is also just putting yourself on camera, right? Because a lot of times you get on these sessions, and a lot of people on camera, and then there's other people where you just see their name, and it's something where you expected to be on camera. And then, you even sometimes have people saying, oh, Sarah, we can't see you. Can you turn on your camera? And, some people maybe won't realize. And then other people will say, oh, no. And I think that's a bad impression, right? So, I mean, not every warrants that. Sometimes it's fine to not be on camera, but if it's something where you're going to be expected to interact with people, it's very important to be ready for that. And, be ready for that first impression and be ready to engage. And like you said, if you're not ready, don't even bother. Don't do it.
I 100% agree. I think that, as a student, for my class, my virtual class, there's some times where the professor is just giving a lecture and he's not engaging with the class at all. And, I might turn my Zoom off because I want to stuff my face because it's the evening time and my USC class is in West Coast. And I do have a thing where I don't like to eat on camera.
No, I don't either.
And you don't like to eat. Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. And I am this is, I guess, the first time exclusive, but I love to get down and grub down. And so sometimes I'm eating and I'm like, I don't care who's looking. I'm just grubbing down. And I don't want people to see that on Zoom. I've had some board meetings that are virtual where they're like, they give us Uber credit and we can get food and they get us purchases food and they want us to eat and chat. I'm just like sipping on the drink. They're like, you're not eating? I'll eat after. I'll let you all chat. Because it's just etiquette for me. I just don't like eating on camera. But I also think what's important, like I don't mind drinking on camera. Like I'll drink water, sip of juice or whatever. That's fine. But I think that's one of those things about being engaged. And like you said before, I think if you're signing up to be in a virtual visible thing, what's the point of doing a Zoom call? You might as well make that a conference call on the phone.
Right. And that's fine too.
And those exist, and those are fine too. I agree. Those are fine too. But I think that's learning those new codes. And I think even as people are transitioning their children into virtual school learning, those manners that are being reinforced for their kids, I wonder if those kids are having a hard time because even their parents are not necessarily following it, not having the camera on, or even the audio, or testing the stuff out. I think it's very important. One of the tips I've given people who are doing virtual, whether it's networking or other different phases, is to test the equipment out. Test it out. If you're not good on it, learn it. I have to relearn Google Hangout because Google Hangout is very different from Zoom. And I've been Zooming all this summer, but Google Hangout has come back again for some people. And one of the things I didn't realize that every little sound you make, the camera goes on you. So I just keep it mute all the time because I didn't want the camera always. I don't want to be that person where they hear a snap or a whistle and then they're looking at me like, you have something to say, Ernest? And I'm like, no. So, I'm very mindful about that because it does. I think nowadays people are looking so much at what's going on in the background. Do you have, somebody that keeps walking in and out of the house? I heard a horror story of someone who, today I read that their name on their Zoom name was a crazy nickname, which I can't even repeat because it was so profane. But it was their Zoom name. that they had as a session with their friends where they made jokey. They had like a happy hour, and it was a jokester
Right.
happy hour, and they were just calling themselves silly names. Well, they forgot to switch out their name on their Zoom name. So when they showed up to their job and went on Twitter, that name was listed under their screen. So right now, as you all watch, it just says Ernest Owens. It doesn't say
Right.
Sassy Guy 91. It doesn't say Crazy Cowboy. It's a very proper name. And so those things people remember. So someone screenshotted it and circled how the name was something else, and it became a big thing in their office, and it was just a bad fumble. But those things are happening even virtually.
They're happening. I mean, there was a story at the beginning of the summer with a Good Morning America reporter who was, doing what a lot of us, I'm sure, do, where it's like business on the top and party on the bottom, or pajamas on the bottom. And he actually did a segment in a suit jacket and boxer shorts, and didn't think people could see that he was in his boxer shorts, but everybody could. And it went viral, and, he made fun of himself, and, but we've seen a lot of that. As you're telling the story, I was thinking, and this isn't as bad as those, but just to give an example, I remember earlier in the summer, I had a fun Zoom with a couple of my girlfriends when one of the Real Housewives franchises was premiering. And I changed my Zoom background to like a dramatic Real Housewives background with a quote. And then the next time I for a corporate prep meeting for one of my talks, and I didn't realize that the same Zoom background would come up. So when I first got on screen, there it was, right? Wait a second, and everyone laughed about it, and I changed it. But I mean, those are the kinds of things. Once it happens once, it doesn't happen again. You're very cognizant of it.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, in many ways, people can.
Time now, we're like 6-7 months in, so some of that is less acceptable than it was in March, and people, I think, also need to be cognizant of that. We're talking about how you present yourself online. Let's give people a couple tips maybe before we take questions about what we think you can do to stay visible during this time. I know you do a lot of lives. That's something that you did pre-pandemic. That's something you always do. And I think that's a great way to stay visible. I noticed recently, maybe you've done it before, but I noticed recently you were doing some Ask Me Anything on Instagram, where people were sending in anonymous questions.
Yeah.
And I had fun reading through the answers, but that was great. So that's a good way to stay visible from your home. What other tips would you give people, things that have worked for you during these months that people can do, to kind of stay top of mind when, we're not really seeing people much?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I've definitely been experimenting with different ways to keep in touch with my followers and people who read the work I do. I mean, I'm in a position where, as a journalist, as a writer, I'm writing frequently and almost like at this point daily about topical stuff. So I'm always active on Facebook and engaging with people on a regular basis. But I do like to disrupt the flow of that. And so what I did on Instagram was I did this, Q&A, ask me whatever. And it just kind of is sporadic because it's not meant for people to just, I don't schedule it. And so sometimes I think it's cool to pop up with cool things like that. But at your own pace and at your own comfort. I always tell people to have fun and to make it make sense for you, and people will follow through. But the best thing I've noticed that people should do, and this is something that I think is really important, is to join in on the community-wide moments where everyone's engaging. A good time like that has been this Versus on Instagram. It was Gladys Knight and Patti LaBelle, and there was Brandy and Monica before that. And those are moments where I think people, collectively are sharing. And so it's always great to join in on these collective events. Next week, I believe, is the Emmys. And I'm excited. I'm a big award show person. It's on Sunday. Can't wait to see who's going to win what and who's going to, how people are going to dress virtually. But, find those collective moments that bring everyone together. I remember on Netflix when Tiger King came out, people was really crazy about that documentary. And I just remember everyone sharing in the discussion about it. Or, when new music comes out. I think finding those collective things that bring us together during these times, and having a, joining in on the conversations, whether it's on social media, on group threads, or with your friends, is some of the best ways to be a part and be visible, be seen during this time, and have fun. And so that is something that I recommend anyone do. There's stuff that we're all watching. I think Dancing with the Stars just came back, and everyone's talking about Nelly dancing to his own music last night, which was something. Look at those, take advantage of those moments, right? And that's what I've been really doing, and I've been having a lot of fun with my friends, talking about just the trend stuff that we all can connect to, and we can all relate.
Yeah, I mean, I think
with the silly stuff.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that's such a good point.
I would just say filling people in with the silly stuff.
Yeah, earlier you had mentioned kind of the examples of the bad networking, when we used to go to real events in real life and people kind of aggressively come at you with like, this is what I do, and here's my card, and shoving cards in your face and all that. And we all hate that.
Yeah.
It can actually be the same online. And even in this challenging time we've been in, I've seen examples of that, where people have not pivoted either their engagement or their networking, and they're still sending out those like sales funnel emails, or connecting with you on LinkedIn and sending you 3 paragraphs about how they coach people and how can they help you and all of that. So I think, what you said is so important. I know, I hate it. So when people, I'll tell you my strategy when LinkedIn, when I connect with somebody and they send me that right away, I just hit, unfollow or remove connection or whatever it is. I mean, I don't even give them a second chance. Like, that's it, But getting back to what you were saying, I think it's so important right now to find ways that are not about business, to stay visible, stay engaged, and have community. And people are so hungry for that. I, early in the pandemic, started a Facebook group called Social Survival Guide. And I think we have like 2,400 people in it or something now. And it's initially, I was just kind of like fun things that were in the news, like good human interest stories and virtual events. Now that things are starting to happen a little bit in person, I'm also talking about, the return of the art museum opening or the Philadelphia Zoo or whatever it is. But people seem to really appreciate having a place to go, to kind of find things that are meaningful or interesting. And I try to pose questions there. So that's something that I've been doing. And, even though it is getting to know people on some level, it's really not related to getting business or to my business. But I think being a resource and putting something out that is going to help people during this time is really important. I think also just being real, which you and I always are. But I think, that's really important right now, is not to kind of have that front up that everything is fine, because, even the people that are thriving during this time, it's not all fine. Nobody's fine. And I think it's really important to address that, kind of like the elephant in the room, these people that are just like, I'm living my best life. And I've lost 30 pounds and I'm on my shakes and, here I am running. And I'm not saying it's just about, the nutrition and exercise, but there are people that literally said for the 7 months, I'm living my best life. And you know what? There have been times of these months, during these months, where I've been living my best life, where I felt really good. And then there's been some really dark times where, I feel like, my gosh, to, and I'm mourning my life the way it was, and there's so much going on that is out of my control. And so I think it's really important, as you're engaging with people, to address that and to really get into how people are doing and be more personal. I think this is an opportunity on that level. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think for me, it's like I said before, with a lot of it, it's just be yourself. At this point, people really are making character judgments now. I think everything that we're doing now is related to character. And what we're seeing during this pandemic is the best and worst of people. There are people that we thought were great because they've achieved so much, but then you find out that as a humanitarian, they're not that good. We're looking at a political cycle where people are looking more at people's humanity more than what they say. And I think that in businesses and organizations, people who fail to pivot towards more character-leaning initiatives and qualities are failing. And I think the humanity has to be restored into people, and people have to remind themselves at the end of the day, we do all of this not for money, not for clout, not for exposure, but to make a difference and to make an impact that will further civilization and ourselves. And I think that can't be missing. And I think during this pandemic, we have seen the best of people's humanity come out. But we also have seen people who just don't get a clue, and they're not learning how to read the room. And so my biggest tip is, people, read the room. Read the room. Think about what is going on around you. Look at what people are talking about. Be sensitive. Be compassionate. Think critically. Do your own research. Google your own topics. And really understand that the world does not revolve around your particular thing. Now, there are times when we want to have fits. And I think, me, I've had a couple of diva fits, but I have it privately in my house. I have it with my spouse. I'm having it, with my friends on the phone. But I'm mindful that I'm not going to go on Facebook and say, oh, my goodness, my masseuse, isn't here to give me my massage this week. My whole day sucks. But there's people out here who are food insecure. We have people in encampments right now. Get a grip.
Have family members or people that are in the hospital.
They're impacted by COVID, right? And so it's important to tell people, or people who are not having a job right now, that's really, really struggling to get any type of work. And so I have told myself, and I've told people, get a grip. And it's okay. We're gonna make it together. But let's be sensitive. Let's have some humanity. Let's be thoughtful about our audience. Because to be a great networker is to know how to read the room and to know your audience. And if you don't know your audience, you're breaking one of the biggest rules in networking.
Yes. That's my God, such a and I think some people don't think they much virtually, but I think actually even more so you have to do it virtually, because you don't even have that body language and interaction and engagement in the same way that you do in person. So it actually becomes even more important. And maybe the last thing we'll touch on, kind of related to this, you and I had talked about the language that people use. So that can apply to companies and company culture. That can apply to some of this networking that's virtual, some of the speaker sessions. People are really getting in trouble because they aren't reading a room, or they are using language that is really upsetting to people, and sort of microaggressions, and things of that nature. And I think one of the things that I had listed in the email is I'd seen some things come up about Kamala Harris, for example, and regardless of what side of the political, you sit on, I think when you start mispronouncing people's names, that is a sign of disrespect. It's a sign of disrespect in person, and it doesn't change when it's virtual. So, the words that you use and you say, and even, being mindful of how people pronounce their name and what their business is and those kinds of things, you may think it's not important, but those things are very important and can be looked at as very disrespectful.
100% agree. And I think, honestly, like I said, it's all about reading the room, knowing, respecting boundaries and understanding the sensitivities of where we are politically in society, where we're on the topic of race and other important things. I want to answer a question that came from a follower, a viewer, that said, what tips would you both give to get the best out of the virtual speed networking sessions? I'll simply say, because I know our time is short and this conversation has been lovely, and we have so many questions to answer, but I would just simply say, go into it with an open mind. Sometimes, to have a crazy, super focused objective can sometimes limit you from opportunities that you may not know, could be possible. So I would say, go into these sessions and these networking sessions with an open mind, have a focus, but don't be so specific. When I used to network, in the earlier years, I would used to come in like, I'm a freelance journalist and I'm here for journalism jobs. And then I realized, actually, people like how I talk, and speaking opportunities can happen too. And I can also, do guest lectures, and I also like to teach. And when I started to really just open myself up in that kind of way, newer opportunities came. And then once I started my business, it was more than just journalism. It was so many other things I could do. So don't come in with necessarily this super zoomed in focused objective. Be a little loose, have a focus, but don't be particular.
Yeah, I will actually be on the speed networking. I know Ernest has another meeting after this, but I'll be on the speed networking. Yeah. I definitely agree with what you've said. I think that, there are people that get into that. I noticed for our speed networking, I think we have 5 minutes with each person. So there could be a tendency on the part of some people to say, I only have 5 minutes. I need to give them my bio. I went to this school and I do this, and this is what I'm looking for. But as you said, it's not about that. Just asking people, how are you doing? How are you managing? Like, what's something positive that's come out, or what are you struggling with that I might be able to help you with? I still think that if you have something specific, you should put it out there, like you said, with a focus. So, for example, if there are people out there who will be on the speed networking who have lost their job and they're job hunting, put that out there. Sometimes people feel some kind of way about putting that out there, but you don't know, who you might meet that can help you. Now, would I sit for the 5 minutes and say, I'm out of work and like, how are you going to help me? Do you have a position for me? No, I don't think you should do that. But I mean, if there is a specific ask you have, I think it's a great idea to put it out there, but spend the time getting to know people and seeing how you can help each other, and not giving the whole laundry list of your bio or your elevator pitch. Nobody really wants to hear that, particularly when you only have 5 minutes. Like, this is your impression to get to know somebody.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And someone said, you're starting out. What if your friends or coworkers are not in the industry you want to get into? How do you start? I think that's the question. If your friends or coworkers are not in the industry you want to get into, how do you start? I guess around networking, perhaps. Okay. I would say that if you're hanging out, I'm sorry. So this is better. You're starting out. What if your friends or coworkers are not in the industry you want to get into? How do you start? I guess my answer to that would be that if you're networking and your friends are in industries that are different, I always say find general events where you all can go and just meet different people. I do believe that there is different types of networking events that require different things. As a journalist, I love to go to some of the diverse journalism events, work with people that are specifically into that. I mean, one thing that I spoke about previously in my writing in Philadelphia about networking is that there's general events for everybody, and then there's specific events for media people, and then there's also specific events for folks that are into teaching. So I just think it's all about looking at the niches and, again, really looking at what kind of events. But what I will say is that, again, it's about reading the room. Don't go to an event for young business professionals or MBAs, and none of you are interested in the business sector in that type of way, or the entrepreneurship sector in that kind of way. Think about how you divvy up your time and recognize that as well. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, so I agree with what you said. I'd also add a new industry, get over yourself, look at what are the things that are out there as far as the industry you want to get in, and don't feel that you have to go with colleagues or friends. Just show up and tell the person who's running the event that you don't know anybody, or it's your first time and you're excited to be there, and can they make an introduction for you? So part of it is just getting over that kind of emotional barrier of, I can go to a networking event without any friends or colleagues, and it really is going to be okay, because this is going to be an opportunity for me.
And I agree 100% with that. That just hit me when you said that, is that, sometimes self-investment doesn't have to have a cosign. Sometimes self-investment is a thing that you just do for yourself. Sometimes you may say, you know what, I wanted to go out and watch this movie. My friends are not into this type of movie, but I want to watch it. If I want to go to the Ritz and I want to watch a French film, it's my prerogative. But I look at it the same way with, yeah. And I also think that's the same way I feel about networking events. I do think sometimes, you shouldn't, get held up in traffic, trying to necessarily make everything a joint effort. And what I've noticed lately is that there's a lot of friends who have made networking events hangouts for them and their friends. And I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's cool if your friends are in the mix and social and you know people already, and you look at it as a homecoming of sorts. But I do think that if this is your first time getting out, and like the question that started off saying that, starting off, I would say that it's really important to really establish your identity and reputation individually before trying to be linked to certain groups and certain cliques and certain groups. Because, what if that person relocates, or what if that person transitions to another role, or maybe you all are not friends anymore? you don't want your experience, your reputation in those networking circles to be necessarily affiliated solely with being that person who's the plus one of this person or this person, this clique. So I always tell people starting off, establish what you do and who you are individually before moving forward.
I think that's great advice. So I saw that maybe a minute ago, our admin came in and said that we were wrapping up. Are there questions out there that we haven't responded to? I know we have like 5 minutes. So, I mean, if there's one or two other questions that you want to funnel to us that we didn't get to, we are happy to get to them.
Yeah, I would say, how would each of you go about connecting with individuals that you would like to meet attending this conference?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
So I would say utilize the app. I actually, if you haven't already, because today was day one of a 3-day conference, if you haven't already, build your profile up in there, put your photo, number one, put your photo, and then you can actually populate your LinkedIn. If you don't want to go through like entering all the information, you can populate your LinkedIn into there. You can contact people through the app. I love when a conference has an app. I do this at the Pennsylvania Conference for Women every year. I look at who's there, who I might not meet, who I might not see in the room, and I contact them through the app, and then you can set something up. I'm so glad to see you're part of this session, or I was happy to see that you're on this app and you're also attending. I would love to set up a time to chat, have a call, have a 15-minute Zoom. I think that you can contact people directly in a way that maybe is less intimidating, as we talked about, as some people don't have that comfort level and are shy. This is a great opportunity. So maybe you have some thoughts on that as well, and then I think we have to wrap up.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to do, wrap up. I like I said, I agree with everything you just said. Be intentional. Like I said, read the room, and just recognize that people are people, and be mindful and respect boundaries. And I think you should be great. So I want to thank you all for watching. Jennifer and I have this very timely, important conversation about networking, and hopefully we'll all be together and see each other in person next year. Given everything. But wear a mask, be safe, wash your hands, and enjoy networking for this convention. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for attending. Thanks, Ernest. Bye.
Thank you too, Jen. Bye.